Hey everybody, hope this finds you doing well. This is Danelle here at Networkchain. As we get ready to enter into 2026, we figured we'd take a look back at all of the things, or at least a few of the major stories, I should say, that has occurred over the last 12 months in 2025. We have seen obviously a lot of volatility with Bitcoin in particular over the past several months, but sometimes it behooves us to zoom out, have some perspective. As we've said in many videos prior to this, sometimes you have to be able to look at the macro to fully understand where we are and where we could be going. So first and foremost, one of the major news stories over the past year, Bitcoin hits new all-time record high. Bitcoin went above $125,000 in October of this past year, and that is monumental. Bitcoin started off as pennies, actually less than 1 cent when it was first introduced to the world. And now the fact that it's reached over $125,000 in basically 16 years is pretty remarkable. It is one of the best performing, basically probably the best performing asset in that time frame. And so we're seeing that there is demand, there is interest in this asset in a technological form of money that is different as a commodity from silver and gold, for example. And we're seeing that it caught a bid over this past year. So that obviously is extremely important and could set the groundwork for where Bitcoin will and potentially could go going over the next several years. So we have to make sure that we appreciate the fact that Bitcoin did reach a new record all-time high in 2025. Another story that was extremely big in the cryptocurrency space, just generally speaking, is the passage of the Genius Act. So basically, this has now been signed into law in the United States. So it basically just provides guidance when it comes to stable coins. So stable coins, as we've mentioned before in the past, are pegged normally, mostly I should say, to fiat currencies. The USDT and USDC are two of the largest stable coins in the market, worth over hundreds of billions of dollars out in the market. And they are pegged to the US dollar 1-to-1. And one of the reasons why stable coins are getting regulated is the fact that not only is it digital, but it also provides faster settlement speeds when it comes to transactions from one entity to another, one peer to peer, but also it provides lower fees. It can provide transparency. So there's a lot of nuance when it comes to stable coins, but when you compare it to the ways that we have been using money and how we transact with money in the past, stablecoins is basically giving us a peek into what the future could look like. And so not only with tokenization of assets, which we're also seeing and we have seen in 2025 with some of the largest banks and asset managers now tokenizing using the blockchain technology. Stablecoins obviously is based on blockchain technology. USDT and USDC are based on several different blockchains. Some are on Ethereum as well as Solana and others. But we're seeing that stablecoins is a growth asset that will likely continue to grow over time because it has to be, and a part of this legislation is showing that there has to be procedures showing the assets are backed 1-to-1 to these fiat currencies. So this is just a step in where we are going with regards to the future of payments. So that was obviously a very big story in 2025. Another big story is not only the institutions that have been investing in Bitcoins, but also in Bitcoin, but also the fact that the first United State has now established a Bitcoin reserve. So Texas was the first state to buy approximately $5 million of the Bitcoin ETF, which obviously is another big story. The ETF, we'll get to that in a moment, but the Bitcoin ETFs continue to do very well despite the volatility. The Bitcoin ETFs continue to break records since its launch at the beginning of 2024. And Texas has now established a reserve by taking $5 million of public state funds and investing in Bitcoin ETFs. So that just goes to show that they believe Bitcoin has further upside from here. at the end of the day, when it comes to institutions, when it comes to the United States, when it comes to other sovereign nations that have started investing in Bitcoin, the goal is for them to invest in an asset and for that asset to go up in price and to have more value over time. So when we see the so-called smart money, big money, like the BlackRocks, for example, who issued IBIT, which was the most successful Bitcoin ETF in 2025, when they are putting their money where their mouth is now at this point, because before they were saying something different. So that's why sometimes, and we've had a video about this before, where they may say something at one moment, but really behind the scenes, they're doing something else. JP Morgan is another example of that, where the CEO for years talked poorly about Bitcoin. And now we're seeing that JP Morgan is launching services for, right now, their high net worth clients to be able to get access to Bitcoin. So we're seeing the writing on the wall. So sometimes it's not just going off of what the headlines are and what we see in the news, but it's also following and seeing what's actually happening. And what's interesting is that with stablecoins, for example, we're able to see the movement that's coming into the blockchain and coming onto Bitcoin, and what's coming onto the Bitcoin blockchain because of the public ledger. So once again, Texas, the first state to actually fund this Bitcoin reserve. There's other states as well, like New Hampshire and Arizona, which have signed into law the opportunity to have a fund that is invested in so-called alternative assets. They have not yet funded those reserves, but they have now put into law the option to be able to buy into Bitcoin or maybe some other crypto ETF. We see that other states, including Pennsylvania, Ohio, North Dakota, Utah, Michigan, have introduced similar bills, but they have not been signed into law yet or have been fully implemented. So we could see more of this happening in 2026. That's why many speculators also believe that 2026 could be a positive year, even though if we went by this so-called 4-year cycle, 2026 would coincide with 2022, which was a down year for Bitcoin. But we could see a difference because 2025, for example, looks like it's going to be ending with Bitcoin in the negative, when normally this would be the year that Bitcoin would be in the positive for the full year. So we could be seeing, and most likely we have seen, a break in the so-called 4-year cycle, if there ever really was one. But at the end of the day, we are seeing progress when it comes to the amount of interest that is coming into Bitcoin. You can see here Bitcoin ETFs and the crypto ETFs. So it's not just Bitcoin now that we've had that has really taken the stage, but now we're seeing other crypto ETFs that have also hit the open market due to, in part, the success of the Bitcoin ETFs. So we showed this graphic in our last video, but you can see here that IBIT still in the top 10 in terms of the inflows that came into the ETF over this past year. And despite Bitcoin being down for the year, you can see that it still had an inflow. And this is just one of the ETFs. You can see that the Bitcoin ETF, the IBIT Bitcoin ETF, still had inflows of over $25 billion. And that ranks in the top 10 of all the ETFs that are now out in the public market right now. So it just goes to show that despite the volatility, there's still belief that Bitcoin as an asset and as an asset class will continue to have a bright future ahead. So if we look here, you can see that 34 billion entered crypto ETFs in 2025. And we see that, as they mentioned here, the IBIT ETF took in over $25 billion, far and away the largest inflows of any other crypto ETF this year. But we also see that Ethereum ETFs had gained traction over this past year. You can see the numbers here when it comes to the iShares, which is also BlackRock sponsored ETF. That also did very well, bringing in over 9 billion in inflows. And so we're seeing that there still is strong flows despite the weak performance. So that is a positive and can be looked at as a positive sign when it comes to where Bitcoin and some of the other cryptos ETFs could go going into 2026. Strategy, the largest holder of Bitcoin of any public company, they have been very transparent, just like the Bitcoin Ledger, which is obviously on brand. They've been very transparent in their purchases of Bitcoin ever since they purchased their first lot of Bitcoin in August of 2020. And this is basically a lesson also when it comes to dollar cost averaging. They could have bought Bitcoin and stopped. They bought it at 11,000, which obviously is has shown a great return. When they first entered in 2020, they put in $250 million, and now it's worth about 1.8 billion, something like that, with that 21,000 Bitcoin. But now that they have continued to purchase quarter after quarter, week after week, year after year, they have now accumulated over $50 billion worth of Bitcoin. They now have over $50 billion of value in their company. When they first started their Bitcoin accumulation, which was in August of 2020, Strategy was worth around $1.5 billion, and now it's worth over 50. So it just goes to show that this strategy has worked for Strategy, and they have accelerated how much Bitcoin they've been adding year over year. In 2025, they have added over 220,000 Bitcoin. And now they have added other offerings to be able to provide optionality to continue to buy Bitcoin. And their founder, Michael Saylor, continues to go around the world speaking on Bitcoin as well as strategy to have optionality when it comes to using Bitcoin, not only as a investment vehicle, but also be able to use it as a banking vehicle, a credit vehicle. So they're really going outside of the box and really starting a new economy when it comes to the Bitcoin economy. So obviously we'll continue to keep an eye out on Strategy and what they do moving forward into 2026. Also, when we look at public companies, public Bitcoin treasury companies, as I should say, there are now over 100 companies that hold Bitcoin, and they hold over 1 million Bitcoin. So they now have a large tranche of the Bitcoin that is out in the market. As we know, there's only going to be 21 million Bitcoin in the universe. So companies like Strategy are trying to accumulate as much as possible. Not only have we seen people like me and you who've been able to buy into the Bitcoin ETF, so we're now getting a share, obviously, of Bitcoin that way, but also what's great about Bitcoin, not only is it available to buy and trade 24/7, 365 days of the year, we have that option to be able to do that as having our own self-sovereignty. That's one of the major ethos that came about when it comes to Bitcoin, is with regards to having your own self-sovereignty. Now, the ethos of Bitcoin and the origins of Bitcoin, that's a whole different story with regards to what's happening now when it comes to the institutionalization of Bitcoin. That's another issue and another story. But just when it comes to the trajectory of Bitcoin, and that's basically what we're talking about here at Networkchain, is the trajectory of this asset class, a technological advancement in a form of money that provides self-sovereignty. We believe that this is one of the best asset classes with regards to having an opportunity to see much more advancement in value and providing a store of value over time. And that's what we're about here. And so once again, we just wanted to go over some of the biggest news stories, some of the biggest ideas over the past year in 2025. Obviously, Bitcoin has a long ways to go. We believe, at least, we think that there still is more value to come in Bitcoin and the entire Bitcoin economy. Thank you so much for watching, following us on this journey. This is a journey that we're all taking together. We're continuing to learn every day, and we hope to see you in 2026. We look forward to linking up with you on the network chain. In the meantime, take care and Happy New Year. Bye bye.